Hello, I'm football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Foot Weekly podcast.
Hello, and welcome to week 13's Foot Weekly podcast. This is a gameplay episode, and I'm delighted to be joined by, first of all, JoshXLS. Hello, Josh.
Yeah, good to be here. It's, coming up to Christmas. We're about a week away now. So, I think people have got a bit more time to play the game. And, hey, with Winter Wildcards coming on Friday, there's going to be a lot of new players to use. So maybe a good time to brush up on some skills.
Yeah, I was going to say, and we have the same panel that we had on the content episode this week, the supporter exclusive episode. And on that, we spoke about the arrival of two playstyle pluses potentially on some of those players, the impact on the power curve, impact on gameplay a bit, and that sort of thing. And as mentioned on that episode, we also had our next guest, Coach Venny. Hello, Coach Venny. Welcome back.
Hello. Coming a bit of a regular now, it seems, on this podcast. So hopefully the viewers are enjoying my input and the way I kind of look at the game, and hopefully you guys are as well. Because I think I do bring, I guess, a different perspective maybe compared to other people within the scene from my past, especially being so heavy in the pro scene.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think, it's been interesting kind of having that experience you have of coaching both kind of pro level players, but also maybe players who aren't on that level, who are maybe not even elite level players. So that is very interesting, I think, for the listeners. And this is your first appearance on a main feed episode going out sort of to the public. So it's good to have you. And let's get into it. So I guess the first thing that I was thinking of talking about is, as we're sort of heading into this two playstyle plus era potentially, or at least we're going to see it seems like, based on leaks, a couple of players at least coming in winter wildcards with two playstyle pluses. We've talked when you've been on previously quite a bit about playstyle impact and things like that. It did make me think, once we use these two playstyle plus players, we'll probably learn things about combinations of two playstyle pluses that will mean that we're kind of interested in picking up different combinations and things. But actually, I was thinking, based on players we've used recently, are there any particular things we've learned about gameplay? And I'm not specifically talking about, let's say, playstyles, but maybe you used... an example was actually, I think we spoke recently about the Thunderstruck 𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬 and using her in midfield areas and having technical plus in that position is a really nice option for unlocking defenses, which probably wasn't particularly something you'd have come across prior to using her, or at least I hadn't actually used anyone in that position with technical plus. So that sort of thing I think is quite interesting and might give listeners or viewers an idea of who to maybe give a go, or what play styles and what stat combinations, things like that, they might want to give a go. So with that in mind, Venny, is there anyone that you've used recently that's made you think, that's something that I want to dig into a bit more, maybe use a bit more?
I think this just comes down to preference, but the body type you want on different positions. So, for example, a lot of people might want like a more agile fullbacks back in especially in the old games. So, like, I want an agile fullback who can move and attack. But with the roles not really actually working with the fullback and they all just stay back, it comes to a point that maybe you would actually want more of a bulkier fullback who's still okay on the ball, but defensively, he's going to be a monster. And I think that's why we saw 𝘵𝘅𝘍𝑚𝑒𝑛DEZ in the past, kind of, especially last year. He was still good going forward because of his pace and how powerful he was. But I think it's becoming more of a common theme, what we're seeing, especially with the lot kind of coming in, even without the bruiser, because he's got such a big body, he can just bruise past like everybody. One person who's kind of making a little bit noise in the pro scene is actually Mykon's 𝘭𝘆𝑗𝑜𝑔𝑎 Benito card. Due to his size, and actually has really good play styles because of the ping pass and the bruiser. But somebody who I used who I actually really, really enjoyed was the 𝘭𝘆𝑗𝑜𝑔𝑎 Benito. And it just kind of made me realise, for me, what I want from a centre-back is them being a little bit wider. I don't know. I just feel like their hitbox, but when I'm trying to do a tackle, is much, much greater. I had 𝘵𝑚𝑒𝑛𝑦 and 𝘴𝘵𝑚𝑒𝑛𝑦 originally, and I just felt like everyone was just bruising past me. Like I wasn't like there as a defender. I just felt like a stick compared to them. And then I brought in Murillo to go alongside 𝘵𝑚𝑒𝑛𝑦. And Murillo, just with that wide body, I just felt way, way more secure. So definitely defending wise, I'm thinking a bit more about the body type, what they bring, and also how good they are on the ball. as well. I think we're getting to that point now where their dribbling stats and their composure and stuff like that is becoming even more important, because every card now, to be honest with you, especially with the 2 playstyles coming in, is becoming quite crazy already. And then, I think Josh alluded to it in the episode on Monday with the technical in midfield. I definitely agree with that. I think it's a very good way to be able to progress up the pitch, because yes, we have through balls, which is great to be able to play a player through, but people don't sometimes understand you can just trigger a player just to take space. So that player can run in behind, push the defensive line, and then instead of sprinting on the ball, which we see like a very common issue with people when it comes to their midfield, it's that they're sprinting with their centre mids and then the opponent runs at them because they find that's a good time to tackle. You can either walk with it behind the spaces or use the R1 dribble, which is that happy in the middle of walking and sprinting, but you're still a little bit more progressive.
That makes sense. I was going to say, it's interesting. The point about defenders, because someone like Murillo, he's not actually even 6 foot, right? But he has a stocky body type, like he's kind of got this wider build. So I guess it's interesting because my preference is, you want a player who's like over 6'2", so they can be lengthy as well. But I guess actually also, to be honest, it's not just about that. Like the actual physical proportions of that player are bigger, and they're more able to kind of be an obstacle basically on the pitch for defenders to get around. And I agree, like at fullback as well, it feels like this cycle that is really, really important. And like I've been using 𝘬𝘯𝘴𝘆 for quite some time, still really good, and like I like the build up with the tiki-taka, but it is quite noticeable, he will get burnt by wingers who are fast with like rapid and things, and it feels like rapid is so good, you kind of need that like controlled or lengthy running style plus maybe quick step to actually keep up with those players. And obviously the defensive positioning is really important in those contexts as well. So I would definitely agree. And I've talked before about jockey in those positions. I think that's going to make a big difference, especially with those like lengthier players who get kind of locked into the sprint. Like you need almost jockey or jockey plus to kind of get them out of that. But yeah, Josh, let's come to you. Anything that you're going to add from this perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up stocky, because like I wanted to then just go and have a look at who is stocky, like who has a stocky body type, regardless of their height. And there's a few players that like jump out that when I use them, I was like, oh, they were like better than I was expecting. One of them was 𝘵𝘇𝗻𝗄𝘏 𝘂𝑣𝑔𝑁𝑒𝑚𝑎n. I think it was a thunderstruck right back from the Bundesliga, because Bundesliga kind of struggles a little bit in the fullback area. Obviously, I think everyone thinks of Alphonso Davies, but he doesn't really work as well in this game, I think, as he has done previously. But he's a fully lengthy fullback, and he's 6'3" with a stocky body type. And I remember using him going, God, he looks absolutely ginormous. Like he was huge and so difficult to get past. Didn't have bruiser, but again, maybe on that kind of Dalot thing of just having quite a big frame. But somebody else that we've mentioned before, the second best header of the ball in the Northeast, Dan Ballard, who his inform, I think I nominated him for a pound for pound at one point. He is stocky tall as well. And I remember feeling using him going, God, he's massive. Like, I don't know. There's certain players, I think, that you really feel it. Like when that Mateta came out, I wouldn't be surprised. I've only got defenders on at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got a stocky body type as well, because he just feels big on the ball and like big in game, really tough to knock off the ball. He is stocky as well. Yeah. Well, maybe I'm a fan of stocky and I didn't know. But like even someone like Bremer, who I've used, there was some combination I was needing to unlock objectives, and he was both Brazilian and from Serie A, and it just like ticked a few boxes for me. But he was so much better than I thought, just the base gold version. And he's also stocky as well. So yeah, maybe there's something in that. And interesting you brought up Murillo, because he was down at like the kind of low 200s when he came out. Yeah. I remember people saying he was really overpriced. He's nearly 400k now. So
do you remember people saying, Josh, or did you maybe say?
Well, no, people said it, and then I said it as if it was my own opinion, so they can take the
Someone
blame
get
for
the
this
clip,
one.
yeah. No.
I think
it's interesting. Sorry,
So I was going to say, I think we saw his price fly up as well, because in the Euros, what we had on the weekend, they had a 5 million budget, and I think every single player had Murillo in their team. So obviously people would have seen that and been like, oh, Anders is using Murillo, he must be good. And of course he was good. I should kind of add on to that point, because people might start getting carried away and trying to put Stocky on every player possible. I would only advise it really with the defenders, to be honest with you, because in midfield, I actually prefer having my centre mids being the lean build, because I feel like they move better on the ball. Doesn't matter how tall they are, but if they have a leaner build, it just feels like they can be more agile and move around it. So you kind of want to try and place these body types as such and have that do have that focus, but in the positions where you might want that. Maybe you do want a bigger midfielder. I don't know, is Rodri stocky? Because he's huge, but I'm assuming he's not. He's got to be average.
He might be unique body type, actually, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it's quite interesting. Like, I would also say players who are average tall, not stocky tall, also look quite big in game, just because they are quite large, right, in terms of their height. And there are quite a lot of like lean, tall players actually, and they don't even look that necessarily super lean when they're quite tall. What's quite interesting about this is that I was told by someone who would know that body type is actually more of a shell. Like, it doesn't actually make a physical difference in the game, but it definitely is tied to a player's weight, right? Like, you can tell that the players who are stocky tall, for example, have much higher weight in the game, because I don't know whether it's like a direct thing, like if you're this weight, you get this body type, but it feels like naturally that would be the case. And I actually wonder whether it's more of a kind of mass thing, like that the player has more mass, so when they're kind of going into physical challenges, they have more of that, ability to win the ball because of that. But it also might be just literally the size and sort of model is so big that it causes you more problems to get around, which is quite interesting.
I don't think it's decided on weight, because favorite of the show, 𝘵𝘵𝘃𝗀𝘀, who's 6'9", is almost 100 kilograms, and he's average tall. So, which is also what Rodri is at 82 kilograms.
But maybe he's so tall that it's actually, do you know what I mean? If it's done on BMI, I wouldn't necessarily, do you see what I mean? It wouldn't actually mean that he would be...
We're body shaming our players now.
He'd have to be 120 in order to be stocky, right? Rather than 100. But yeah, no, because there actually really aren't many like super tall players in the game who are stocky. But yeah, it's an interesting point of discussion, I think, for sure. And then you also have, we just talked about it briefly there, but like unique body types and things where it's kind of specific to the player. But actually, yeah, I guess I didn't raise anything myself that, in terms of things that we've noticed when playing the game that, perhaps a player has given us the sort of indication that this might actually be something to look out for. And for me, something I've been noticing that I think you kind of will notice, because it's really obvious, like you can see the animation, is the game changer playstyle for shooting. I think the striker I have currently is an evolved 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦, who has, I think, all the shooting playstyles, not power shot, obviously that's kind of irrelevant, isn't it? Apart from game changer. And having used other strikers with game changer, it is quite noticeable, I think, that the game changer playstyle allows you to kind of unlock some animations that really help finishing the ball in certain positions. And I think, sure, Finesse Plus is great, Low Driven is great, and you'll probably be able to cover most angles. But there are certain times where I think that a player with Game Changer is using the most optimal shot that they can use, which is an outside of the foot shot. And it means they can take advantage of like a finesse, because you can do finesse shots, which are 𝘵𝑚𝑒𝑙𝑎s essentially, or low drivens, which are 𝘵𝑚𝑒𝑙𝑎s as well. And I think both of those things in certain situations are getting you a goal where maybe you wouldn't have got one otherwise. So I do think it's something that I would look out for as a base play style. You're probably not going to really want it as a plus, obviously, because you've got Finesse Plus and Low Driven Plus is superior for sure. But as we actually go into the kind of two play style plus world, maybe actually having, Finesse Plus or Low Driven Plus and Game Changer Plus could actually be kind of more effective than you might think, because I think it's something you see as well at the pro level, right, Venny, that people use those outside of the foot shots.
Yeah, especially with Mbappe. I think, like you said, it just unlocks another way of being able to shoot in front of goal, and a lot of people an issue I see with a lot of players from all sorts of levels is that they overthink the situation in front of goal. That was probably before the keeper movement, but now with the keeper movement gone, it just makes the decisions even easier. Like, you just use the play styles your players have got. So if you've got finesse, you just use a finesse shot. If you have a low driven, you set yourself up for that. And if you've got a 𝘵𝗫𝗧, you can set yourself for that. If you have them 3 types of shooting, which 𝘵𝘂𝗍 does, for example, which we see a lot from the left mid spot, you can take all sorts of angles, and it's very hard for the opponent to then know what he wants to give you. You know, because he'd be like, I'll send him wide and put him for the 𝘵𝗫𝗧, but well, I can just 𝘵𝗫𝗧 near post and it still go in. So yeah, it is getting used more and more. We saw it so much at the end of last year, especially with the 𝘵𝗫𝗧 low drivens. That was like a serious thing. I think maybe once we get the 2 play styles pluses come in, and somebody having like a base game changer and then a gold 𝘵𝗫𝗧, I think we'll see that more and more come in. But as of right now, because I've tested the shot and it still works as good as last year, it's just without the play style low driven, it doesn't, obviously the shot animation isn't as fast, so it can get defended. But yeah, I think it could be a sleeper and people will become more and more aware of it as time goes on.
That makes sense. Yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, it's something to look out for. And also, I wanted to say, if you're going to build a longer chain and you haven't used it yet, there is the intro to evolution. What is it? The intro to? No, it's one of the timed evolutions, right? That you can do on the web app. That gives you the game changer play style. I think if you haven't already used it, it's a cap of maybe. I mean, the overall cap's really low, right? So just bear that in mind. But it can be a way to add
rated.
That play style. 82 rated, yeah. So if you're working on a player who's quite low rated, maybe add that in. Just bear in mind you've got to wait 24 hours to claim it.
Also, just say there's one other player that isn't 𝘵𝗵𝗍 that has a combination of low driven, finesse, and game changer. She's everywhere.
Very true.
𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦 has that combination. It's interesting though, because with Evos we've been kind of limited to 1 playstyle plus and 6 base playstyles, and so for a forward, it'd be interesting to, like, where would you place game changer in the hierarchy of playstyles? Like, I think you'd want probably finesse plus or low driven plus. I'd probably err on the side of finesse, but I know there's some debate there. So you'd want those 2 as 2 of your 7. I think 𝘵𝗍𝗧 is a must. I think 𝘵𝑚𝑃 is a must. I think technical, maybe quick step, then game changer is the 7th, or would you have game changer higher than, say, technical and quick step there?
Yeah, that's interesting to go through the list from top to bottom. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, we're putting ourselves on the spot here a little bit. But I think mine would probably go, I'll give Venny a chance to think, because mine would probably be finesse plus, low driven. But then I would probably want rapid, actually, I think.
Over quick step.
Over quick step, yeah. Just because I think it's more effective when you're running on the ball. And then would like, yeah, as you said, I think incisive, maybe just over 𝘵𝗍𝗧 potentially. Because I just feel like when I play a through ball without incisive, it's like so awful. Whereas if I play a pass, it's okay, but it's not great. Incisive. And then 𝘵𝗍𝗧. It's interesting, actually. Maybe I would have game changer after that. I'm trying to think of the other ones, but I think technical is really good. So I'd probably go technical, then go game changer after that. So it'd probably be like the 5th or 6th for me, potentially.
If I'm being honest with you guys, I think you're overestimating running play styles for a striker, because I don't know how often you run with your striker, but it's not very often for me. It's my wingers are the ones who are running through. So, but then everyone plays very different to how each other. You might be trying to play for your striker to get through behind the defense and stuff. Where I would say, again, I obviously base myself off a lot of the pro stuff. It's very rare that my striker's running in behind as such. I kind of see my striker as like another number 10 a lot of time, especially even in 4-5-1. I actually see it as a 10 rather than a 9 to kind of connect all the other positions up. So I do think it's good, and I do think it's probably behind game changer, like, to be honest with you, when it comes to the running play styles.
Rapid,
yeah. But
would you feel the same with quick step? Yeah, because like for me with quick step, I'm thinking more about creating like a little bit of space in the box with that first touch. And I feel like the combination of quick step and technical, if you look at the players that have quick step and technical, they tend to be the most valuable players in the game. Like, I think Morgan has it, Pele has it, Ronaldo has it, Eto'o has it, Bobby Charlton, I think, has it as well. And I don't know, there's something about that combination I feel like makes people dribble incredibly quickly.
Yeah, as well with rapid, obviously you get them heavy touches, don't you? Sometimes when you're holding sprint, where sometimes it doesn't feel like in control. With quick step, it only activates when you're sprinting, right? And it doesn't give you like a heavier touch. I think it just tries to make you go faster. So yeah, I see the point. I think I mentioned this maybe in the gameplay episode I was in previously about using sprint touches around the box. So I don't sometimes need, and pros don't really need quick step in their moments because they're utilizing the sprint touch to be able to instantly drive into the space, and then they're combining it with the R1 and then the left stick. And then if they need to burst out, they're then just utilizing the R1 dribble. But if you feel like, I don't know, are you kind of saying like you think R1 dribbles faster with quick step? Or do you feel like the combination?
Well, at least that's how it feels, yeah, because it's kind of it's sprint dribble is how they talk about it, and I don't know how that then works alongside quick step because it's kind of not a sprint, but is a sprint.
I've never looked into it to be honest with you, but it does sound like it could definitely make sense, right? Like you mentioned about like the two play styles kind of combining together, and if it does work, then that's obviously very, very strong. So I think it's just because the players we've got really now in the pro scene, like none of them have technical plus quick step, so I've never really looked into it. Maybe like Peter doesn't have it, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 doesn't have it, so yeah.
It's notable how much kind of difference of opinion there is even here. Like I think we're kind of only really in agreement on the fact that it's finesse plus low driven. And then from that point onwards, I think it's maybe a bit. Are you both saying tiki taka as the one after that, maybe, or you may be thinking incisive could be tiki taka too?
Well, I don't know about that one. That one's like they're both like important as each other. Again, I think it bases.
Do you know what? Let's take a break. Venny's gonna pick. We're gonna force him to pick his top 6 regular playstyles, and then we'll do that straight after the break. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello, welcome back. So as promised, let's get Venny's top, playstyle plus, and then 6 regular playstyles that he'd have on a striker. I think we're assuming you're a striker in a 1-striker formation, because that's how most people play. But yeah, take us through it from top to bottom.
Okay, so I'm gonna say my point of view is from a pure pro point of view, and like with how the game is actually played. I think, like you mentioned, like we all have a different opinion about like what we would prefer on different players, and I think this is where a lot of people get hooked up. Before I dive into it, but a lot of people get hooked up and like, oh, this player's using this, so I need to use this. It's like everyone plays different, everyone plays a formation different. Like if you think tiki taka is better than incisive for your playstyle, then tiki taka is better. But I'll dive into it now. Finesse shot plus for me right now, with the keeper movement being destroyed, it is the number 1 playstyle when it comes to all attacking decisions. I'm even putting it onto my centre mids at this point. So that's number 1. Then number 2 would be low driven, because again, it gives you that option to go forward. Then it would be incisive, because as I mentioned, the striker is kind of like a number 10 a lot of times within the build-up, getting the wingers through, then tiki-taka, then technical, then game changer, and then the last spot is actually, like, I'll be honest with you, I don't actually know what I would want for this spot. And I think it's like a choice of like the quick step or the first touch is what I've actually got written down within my Discord, is what the meta playstyles I would have. If I go off my list, it would be quick step over first touch. So I have quick step written down for that.
So you do think quick steps for you more important than rapid on a striker then?
Striker, yeah, because a striker, a lot of times people are very aggressive with their centre backs. So if I'm using sprint and I get that heavier touch, which I kind of mentioned with using rapid, and I get that big heavy touch and then they go and hit me, I just feel a little bit out of control. With quick step, again,
that's fair, yeah.
If I'm most of the time, if I am getting the striker through, it'd probably be like a pass if I'm playing 4-4-1-1 from a cam to a striker, and I'm not really worried about him doing the heavier touches. Actually, rather than keep him like being faster with quick step and then being able to kind of have the touches predictable, I think is actually really important. So I can set myself up for the finesse to go around the keeper a lot of the times.
Yeah, that actually makes sense because I'm playing the 4-4-1-1 most of the time. So having the striker have rapid so that occasionally you can slip them in and they'll definitely beat the centre back is kind of important to me. But for some people, that's not really going to be the case. If you're using them in more of a kind of 10 or false 9 role, which a lot of people kind of do, especially in 4-5-1. Interesting discussion, and definitely useful for people evolving players, which everyone's doing at the moment. Let's park the conversation around players and maybe move on to talking about, an interesting kind of thing that, Josh, you've been experimenting with over the last week or so, which is to play manual. And maybe give a bit of background in terms of why you started to do this, because I know you've got a long history with this.
Yeah, so I played 𝘄𝑠 for about 3 or 4 years and played that fully manual. That it was just the way I decided to start playing that game, because the game felt weighty in compared to FIFA at the time. The game just felt like everything had weight to it. The passes had weight to it, and it was like, okay, if I can measure things with manual, then that'll be fun. But I also mainly played that game co-op, as like in a co-op, and when you play co-op on manual, you can start unlocking some really interesting things because you kind of know where each other are going to move and you know where you're going to pass the ball, and you can kind of dive on a loose ball a bit quicker in co-op than you could do if you're in single player. I was pretty good at 𝘄𝑠. Like me and my best man, actually, who we played co-op, we were kind of top 10 in the world quite a few times in like the weekly rankings. So it wasn't like we were doing badly playing manual. So coming back to FIFA at the time, now into 𝘵𝑐, I've never been brave enough to go on then, let me see what manual's like playing here, because it's a far more assisted game in general. But this week I was a little bit like kind of, I didn't really want to grind rivals. The live events weren't really doing it. The rewards for the silver tournament are just shocking. So I was like, let me have a bit of fun. And this was kind of brought on by, I've talked about it a few times, but the R1 square, the kind of manual lofted pass. I just felt like it was breaking defenders, both AI controlled and human controlled defenders. And it made switching difficult. People weren't expecting it. Like those different passing angles, and then even stuff like double tap through balls, which are so heavily assisted. But I think because they're so assisted, they're being played in places people aren't expecting the ball to be played, like properly around defenders. To, you know, a player's making a run from the left, you play a double tap through ball, it will play it like 45 degrees the other side of the defender, but the player will get there because of the momentum. So I was like, let me see what this feels like. Now, this isn't something to do that's going to get you more wins, right? This isn't a tip that's going to get you anything more than what you usually get. But I enjoy it. I really enjoy the manual aspect of it. And when it's right and when it clicks, and when you have that quick passing move that you can put together, and then you have the like manual finish at the end of it, it is it's so satisfying. It's satisfying in a way that no other goal will ever be satisfying when you're playing on assisted settings, just because you know you've done it all yourself. But I will say it's highlighted a few things. The first thing is that precision shooting is much closer to assisted than it is to fully manual. Like, the difference between them is huge, to the point where I when I put it on, I was shooting as if I was still on assisted settings, because I was like, well, it's effectively manual. It's the same thing. It's really not. I also think that power shots aren't manual either. I think I think they are probably precision-esque. And so actually, like, I went back to how I learned to play manual, which is shoot straight at the keeper, and because your aim's not that good, you'll probably end up missing either side of him before eventually, like, beginning to hone it into the corners. When you do get it in the corners, it goes in. There's like there's no question it's going to be saved. Obviously, with no goalkeeper movement, that's pretty much the case with everything right now. But passing was where I found it really interesting. The moment you did anything aerial, your opponents, their defenders don't act the way you're expecting them to. Like, they don't switch, they don't turn as quickly. The AI doesn't react in the same way. They don't like challenge for balls in the same way. It's really bizarre. It's very difficult. Like, I will say, like, playing on manual, if you're not used to doing it, is very difficult. It's so different to anything you'll ever play. The one area that I think it might be worth people experimenting with, though, is crossing. Because whilst if you put anything more than 2.5 bars, it decides that is going to the other winger. If you can get your aim right and get power between 1 and 2 bars, I've not seen crossing that effective in this game. Like, it is like a laser onto the head of your player. So if you're someone who does like crossing or does want to play a little bit differently, it will take a little bit of getting used to. But I genuinely think there's something in that. Now, the problem then is that you have to head the ball, and heading is woefully inconsistent. But, you know, get an acrobatic player in there and just start hitting acrobatic shots. I don't know. Maybe you can make the most of it. But it's been a really, like, fun experiment. And I don't know. Sometimes I think playing on manual can expose a few things, both within your game, but also within the game, that maybe haven't been looked at that much. The kind of detection of who a pass is going to is really, really interesting. You know, stuff like you can play a through ball kind of aimed at a certain player, but if the game decides that you're trying to play it to a closer player, then it will switch you to that closer player and make them run at the player who should be getting the ball to go and collect it. And that feels frustrating until you realize it's also done the same thing to the defender. So it's switched to the defender that should be marking the player the game thinks is receiving the ball. And so if you're quick enough and you can then switch the player because you're not locked on yet, because you're not on assisted passing, you actually can start creating big separations in people's defense because they're not switching to the players that they're expecting to switch to. And so they're sprinting all over the place in the wrong direction. It's been it has been really, really fun to try it out. As I say, not something that I think is going to get you any more wins, but if you're looking for, I'd be really interested in starting like a full manual tournament type thing, because I'm sure they exist, but there's something about it that feels much purer, and passes, you have to really think about your passes. It feels much more weighty in terms of like, okay, I'm going to play this into the space because I can see my players making the run through. Through balls feel like really underpowered compared to just normal passing, because with the X pass, you can play it as a through ball anyway. You can play pinged through balls effectively. And so the ball gets through gaps into space much, much quicker. And then the ball slows down a lot on the pitch. Again, something I don't think you really see if you're not using manual. The ball slows down really, really quickly on these pitches. So yeah, if you want some fun, try it against squad battles first, because if you like walk into your rival's division or champs, it might be a little bit tough. But yeah, so it's been fun.
A starting point to ask you about this, Venny, is: do you think that actually pro level play should basically be completely manual?
No chance. No chance.
But what I say, obviously, it's not going to be that because just the game doesn't work like that for most people, so it'd be quite jarring, obviously. But as in, if you could kind of wave a magic wand and force pro players to play under any conditions, would you rather see them play manual? Obviously, after they've got used to it, they're not struggling.
Personally, no. And I actually had this argument when they originally brought precision shooting into the competitive scene, because I thought there was no problem with the finishing what we had with green timing and stuff. Was because I think from the pro side, to make it work, it needs to be the closest thing to what everyone else is playing. So if we play manual settings and they're looking at us pass the ball off the pitch when it's 2 yards out, or missing the target completely, they're not going to relate to that and be like, oh, look at him, he's bad, but they ain't got a clue how it potentially feels because they're not forced to play it themselves. If we look at all the big esports and the big games, the pro scene is playing the same version as the what we would play, you know? And I think that's important just for relatability for a lot of the situations. And that's why I didn't like when they brought precision originally in, because it wasn't forced to everyone, and it still wasn't forced to everyone. So when people see some chances, even though Josh mentioned, like, and I agree with him, it's not pure manual, but people will still miss chances. And they're like, oh, how's he missed a target there? I always hit the target there. They're using assisted shooting. It's having that relatability a lot of times so they could understand it. Like if everyone used precision shooting and they're missing a target and then they see a pro do it, it's like, oh, I do that as well. And it's relating to them. So yeah,
so I'm as good as a pro.
Let's ignore the kind of optics for the rest of the game. Like, for the people watching, that it is different. Do you think that the game should be very manual, like really at the pro level? Like I mean, obviously, like, I get what you're saying. Like, this should be a relatability element, but would it be sort of fairer and feel better and maybe be more kind of interesting if you had to be pretty much completely manual?
It's really hard to say without actually like playing manual myself, I get to see like what are the differences on it. I would like the game to be more manual in aspects. So for example, defending, again, like we had at the start of the game, it was very manual, to be honest with you. And if you didn't defend the situation manually, you was getting punished. I like that because there's a skill gap to that. There's a skill gap to how to defend in doing so. But maybe that manual passing, for example, could bring a skill into how good are you actually doing through balls. Because obviously with assisted passing and incisive, you don't really even need to have good aim, to be honest with you, at that point. You just put the right power and then you aim in a direction and you trigger the player and it'll go through. So maybe it brings a skill gap towards that. But I think for what I would like to see, like, it would be more the skill gap comes into the defending and, to be honest with you, the build-up in some ways. But I was going to ask you, Josh, do you notice the play styles having impact on manual?
Well, certain play styles actually become more important than others, I feel like. Like, for example, pinged pass, you notice it because the ball travels a bit quicker, but the main place you notice it is how your player receives the ball, is like how good their first touch is. So it's kind of a slightly different thing. Like for through balls, I didn't really notice any difference between incisive and not incisive, which felt good because you just can't really play a through ball with someone without incisive unassisted. Shooting wise, finesse, like you could tell was much better. Low driven, you could tell was like quicker, and they animate the shot quicker. Like it feels like they can execute it quicker. But then it just depends on like, are you aiming correctly, kind of thing, you know. So there's I would say it lessened how important the playstyles were, but it didn't make them completely useless. The thing that going full manual does do is it does make passing. It just makes stats like less valuable as well, because, you know, essentially the short and long passing stat is how much error there is on what they're doing. And when you move to full manual, that error is reduced dramatically because it has to try and recreate what you're doing. There are certain things like you noticed tiki-taka if you were trying to play anything that was more than like, I don't know, 120 degrees. Like if you were trying to play a 180 pass, if they had tiki-taka, you were able to execute that at a normal speed. If you didn't have tiki-taka, it would dribble about 5 yards away from them, which is how it should be, by the way. That's like, I think, how the actual game should work. But so there's like, it just highlighted certain moments, I think, rather than it being every action that you did felt impacted by the playstyle.
It's kind of interesting. Like, there's also maybe, to respond to your point about Venny, it being something where you wouldn't want the wider kind of audience to watch a game that is quite different to how they would play the game. It's fair to say that there's very few kind of pro level competitive things out there, like games out there that are successful, where there's as much assistance on what the competitive player is doing as there is in FC. Like, I'm just not sure there is another game that would equate to FC in terms of that level of assistance. So you could almost argue that, considering FC, okay, it's esports is not, let's just say it's not thriving, right? That there is an argument that maybe something as dramatic as that could be good for it in terms of actually changing, and people would become aware, like, and the commentators could say, they're playing on manual control, so it might look different to how you're playing the game. But that does make it complicated to get to that level, because I don't know how you progress up to it. But yeah, Josh, is there something you wanted to add on that?
Well, there is a game that's kind of a bit similar, which is like F1. So in F1, you have like your ability to race, but then you have your assistance and how assisted are you driving? Are you having braking help? Are you having have you got traction control on? Do you have the lines on the road that show you when you should brake and when you should accelerate? So, and how much assistance you have kind of determines actually how good you are at the game. It's not really like how well you race against other people as much. Within the game it is, because it has to be accessible to like new players and to inexperienced players. But once you get into the pro scene, that they're driving at like with no assistance, with fairly like representative damage. And that's a different game. That is an entirely different game to what you would be playing if you kind of just opened up F1 for the first time. So I think there is precedent for the actual settings to be different between the game that maybe the kind of casual players are playing and the pros are playing. But what I think we're missing, I think what maybe Venny hit on a little bit, with the fact that the pros have to use precision, but that you don't have to use precision in Rivals and Champs. That's a weird thing for me. Like, Rivals and Champs is the competitive game mode. Like, we have competitive settings already. There's already a difference in the settings you have to use. Let's start ramping that up. Let's start pushing towards more of a manual game. Let's start adding skill gap into, I don't know, the skills of football, like your ability to pass the ball properly. Like that would seem a logical step to me, that then, okay, if you want to compete in Champs and Rivals, you are going to have to now use some level of less assistance in order to compete there. And then that would then start bridging the gap between, if you did want to move the pros to a more manual level. The thing I would say, again, going from like the F1 thing, is that actually when they play with no assistance, because they're able to brake and accelerate at different times, they're actually able to perform at a level that is usually better than people who are playing on full assistance, because they're able to do things that you're not actually able to do when the game's essentially playing half of the game for you. So maybe after enough time, you might see some of that happen if you began to have that separation. I don't think we will ever get there. I think it probably has to be a completely separate competition of like a full manual competition, where if you're watching it because it is completely manual, not because this is the pro scene kind of thing. And then that way the difference is intrinsic in the fact that you're watching it. It's not something you have to discern as a viewer.
Yeah. I guess the dream would be we get to a point in which I think you'd have thought they'd have tried this already, but I don't know, where essentially the way to beat, say, an AI defense is to be on manual controls, because that's going to give you the tools to unlock that defense. And so therefore people would adopt it themselves. Venny, let's just hear from you on this, and then maybe we'll take a break and we'll come back to some more kind of tips for listeners. But anything you wanted to kind of add on this debate about manual in the pro scene?
Yeah, I think you can argue with Call of Duty, for example, there's aim assist when they're shooting, so that is assisted. I wouldn't say Call of Duty is one of the biggest esports, but I would say Call of Duty is the closest title to FIFA with how dominant it is within that scene in that like the gaming genre. So I kind of compare it to that, and they're using the same settings as such. Obviously, they might be able to change a couple settings to get better performance out of their stuff. I see the argument for both. But I just don't think it's possible as well. Like, the reason why there's assistance in FIFA is because you can only control one player as such at a time. So there has to be assistance in some sort of way. Because the AI has to move in a certain way. The person needs to kind of work in a certain way to work around. They would have to change, like, I think you would have to make an actual game which is catered to the manual play as such. Because I don't think like the game is, as Josh said, like it breaks actually the game in some parts because the game's not working towards manual, it's working towards being the assisted option. So I think there could be ways they could try and make the game more less assisted, but it's doing it in the right way. And I think shooting was kind of like the first step of them doing it. But for me, as I kind of mentioned, for me, it's the defending part where I think they really need to make that manual and bring a skill into that, because if you see it, when you watch somebody who can defend good. I actually had somebody, I remember at the start of the game, message me when it was really hard to defend. He's like, we were one of the best defenders I played. I haven't received that message for about 6-7 years because it's so easy to defend now, you know? Yeah. And it was actually quite nice to actually have that, like somebody be like, oh yeah, your defending was really good. And it was quite nice to hear. But now, usually if somebody beats you, they're like, oh, you AI, like you're just using the AI. It's like, well, at the start of the game, you couldn't really. So yeah.
Yeah, and actually those are the tips we'll get into in just a second after the break, I think. But yeah, it's an interesting point. And actually, I think if it was to go manual, it would almost have to be co-op, I think, to kind of make that work, because then you've got two. It makes. I've tried manual as well, and like the AI making runs and trying to like get involved in your passing play does make it a lot harder. But if it's another human, then it becomes a lot more logical. Like in pro clubs, for example, you can play kind of manual and it works. I truly think that it's as crazy as it sounds, Rush 4v4 with fully manual would actually be the future of esports in FC. Because hey, if you want to watch 11 versus 11, you can just watch real football. You can't watch Rush unless you actually maybe futsal. But yeah, anyway, on that we'll take a break and we'll be back to give out some tips and maybe talk about things that you can do manually in the game that will give you an advantage potentially. Hello and welcome back after the break. So, as promised, in terms of some manual things that you can do, I know even at pro level, there are a few things, right, Venny, that people do that are effective that people might be able to try, actually.
Yeah, so there is like what Josh mentioned with the R1 square, which is really good, especially if you get in press and you want to just kind of release the pressure off yourself, just using the R1 square to guarantee the ball to land where you want the ball to land. It's really nice. But what we're seeing like a lot with the top pros at the moment is using the R1 triangle. Just to do like how you would do a manual pass, but just using the R1 triangle, especially with the defenders, because the defenders, they're not very composed on the ball. They're not the greatest on the ball. And you do want to be able to kind of move the ball fast with them and feel secure that the ball's going to go to actually where you aim. So pros are currently using the R1 triangle just to do fast passes between their back line or even across from like left back to right back, just using a full power R1 triangle to go across. And that's like a nice way to use the manual passing, but also not change all your settings because you might like it in the attacking areas, for example.
Yeah. And actually to translate that for Xbox, so it's RB and X, right?
RB and Y.
For the lob pass,
yeah.
though.
Yeah.
For the lob pass. And then RB and Y. Yeah. For the through ball,
yeah.
And actually, Josh, the lobs passes, manual lob passes, I think you mentioned this is something that's quite good at, potentially just flicking it over a defense for an attacker to run onto.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time I was talking about it as kind of a replacement for the first time chip through balls, which was so powerful last year. I feel like they still had a bit of utility at the beginning of this game, but they seem to have like drifted off a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like I think they're good kind of from a defensive perspective. I think, for like clearing the ball, making sure it gets up the field and removing some of that I don't know, you can have a bit of like wild variation in where a clearance goes, or where like just a normal full powered square goes. One thing I would say is it takes longer to execute a manual clearance because you kind of have to leave it a longer time for it to accelerate the kind of power curve to get it like really far up the pitch. And the other thing is when you try and do lobbed passes for a short distance, you actually have to put a lot more power on than you think. I see a lot of people try them and end up kind of like they just get headed away because they've tried to land it at the feet of the player they're aiming for, and really you're kind of wanting to land it about 5 yards behind them because they'll take a few steps back, chest it down, or they'll be able to like take it on the turn and go. But the place that I'm using them more is when somebody's sat a little bit deeper and you're playing the passes kind of around the box. If you can have that run from deep, if you play it as a manual square and you can get it over the defender, they just don't react as well. Like the again, as I say, like the AI switching or the switching doesn't work as well, and then the AI doesn't react as well to a manual pass. I think that's why the manual through balls are so effective as well, is because it just feels, it's kind of like how if you have tiki-taka or pinged, it feels like it lessens the ability of the opponent to intercept it because it's like on, oh, well, this has been played with the play style, so now you need to have this interceptions and intercept to intercept this one. It feels kind of like that to some extent. But yeah, like I say, I've been using it in those sorts of situations. And you know that I use manual triangle a little bit as well, like the R1 and triangle, but slightly less, just because usually you're wanting like the times where I will do it, I have a lot of time on the ball, so I don't have to think about it. Whereas I've got used to using the R1 square in those situations to kind of know what I'm looking for now. It again, there's a skill level to it. It takes some time to do, but it feels really good when you pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Actually, this conversation just reminded me, because I've been using them a lot recently. Don't sleep on the threaded through ball. I actually find that quite useful in certain contexts. You hold L1 and R1, press the through ball button, or LB and R1. I said the same thing. LB and RB, press the through ball button, and it just gives you like a slightly further ahead through ball. Basically, it can sometimes cut between, say, fullback and centre back. If you've got say winger running onto a ball who's definitely at a pace advantage versus the fullback, it makes it much more likely that they're going to have enough time for that advantage to actually kick in and they'll get to the ball. And if you're playing through balls down the sides, that kind of thing, I think they are really useful. And if you put a bit of curl on them, that can really help as well. So, just press the left trigger to get the curl. I think it was really actually quite effective. So yeah, a couple of different through ball options we've gone through. Just to kind of wrap up, people are always asking about tips to break down AI defenses, of course, because it's still very much something people struggle with. And they've said they're going to release a patch to combat this, but that doesn't look like it's going to be until January time. So over the Christmas period, when people are perhaps playing a bit more, maybe they have a bit more time, they're going to want to be able to potentially enjoy their Christmas by breaking down AI defenses. So, Venny, what would you kind of say is a top tip, I suppose, or the things that you're doing, which is definitely kind of helping you open up defenses and that people might be able to try?
Yeah, I'll just quickly give another tip as well with the through balls, because I think people haven't actually clocked onto this yet. They've changed how through balls work. You can literally put like max power at the halfway line and it won't go off the pitch. So when you're doing a through ball, have in your head that you're over hitting it. You're not doing it so it's that it goes into their feet perfect. You actually want it to go ahead of them so you can take momentum and run through. But then let's dive into how to beat these people what are holding onto their centre mids, or they're in a low block and we're struggling to beat them. So I think there's like a couple ways we can kind of think about our players. So first of all, right now we need finesse plus on our right mid, our left mid, our strikers, our cam. The reason for it, people are currently defending very deep, but also very safe, and still thinking that they have keeper movement to bail them out. So what you want to try and do is just driven pass into the attackers around the box, and with your first touch, instantly set yourself up for the finesse angle. If it's either, I think it would be about like a like a 30-degree angle, depending on where you want to go to either side, and just be able to hit a finesse. It's going to make your decision making around the bots a lot better. And I think that's where people are struggling at the moment. When people have a low block, is their decision making and what they need to do. Again, a combination we can use the tiki-taka on our midfielders, because we need to move the ball more a lot of times to open up the spaces to get into our attackers to be aggressive, and think about the space in between the fullbacks and the centre backs, or outside of the fullbacks, or between the centre backs, to be able to be aggressive in towards them spaces. So the tiki-taka is really useful to be able to kind of move that ball fast when you do have the opportunity. And just don't be scared to go at them. Like I say to a lot of my players, like a lot of their first touches are backwards and so safe. You would be more happy of losing the ball more times around the box, knowing that you've gone for the opportunity and been aggressive with your first touch, than took a touch away and tried to protect the ball and wait an extra time. And then you've got to wait even longer for another opportunity to open up. And sometimes the opportunity doesn't even arise.
Yeah, it's a really good point. You're right about, like, if you see that space, like, you want to get into it and attack it, because that's when people, especially if, I know pros are very good at assessing when they actually need to move a player, or when they need to, go into a space to defend you as you go into the space with an attacker. But like beyond that level, like, people often don't make the best decisions. So you'll kind of like start driving into space, they'll just suddenly start moving across to cover it, even though they maybe didn't need to, and then you've opened up space. And you're kind of then sort of one step ahead, whereas the whole rest of the time when you're playing in front of them, they're kind of like, oh, I'm happy for you to do this, and they're not really forced to make a decision. So I agree, like, you do actually want to like probe them and actually start to push into areas, especially if that space is not a space where you're going to get like, there's enough space that you're not going to have a defender just come straight into you and take the ball off you. So yeah, I think it's a really good point. Is there anything from your perspective, Josh, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, like, moving the ball quickly is massive. It's why I really like tiki-taka, because it means that I feel like people that don't like controlling the defenders are people who are bad defenders when they do control them. That's why they're trying like not to go and grab them. And so what you kind of want to do is introduce a level of panic that, okay, if I don't grab a defender now, I'm going to be in trouble. And I think the only way to really do that is to ping the ball around quickly, including a pass like into your striker's feet on the edge of the box. Even if you just pass it immediately back, it might be I need to go and mark that player, especially if you've got somebody like 𝗵𝘀𝘀 up top, which I would never do. Like, there's just that kind of inherent panic of, I need to do something. I think a lot of people will fall into the trap of attacking down the wings and then trying to move in from the wings. And that isn't, you're not panicking as much, because if you're someone who doesn't like to do one-on-one defending, you'd sooner just then go and grab the midfielder and mark the cutback, because you're not really doing me any damage by having the ball kind of on the touchline. The cutbacks aren't as strong as they have been in previous cycles. Whereas if you get the ball to the wing and then start playing like along the edge of the box, like through midfielders along the edge of the box, play like a quick pass into a striker, sometimes if there's enough space, you can just take the touch and take the shot very quickly. And actually, it doesn't matter if they've switched in or not. But even if you take that ball and then pass it back out, they're now cycling through players because they're panicking, because the ball's now in the box and you're going to have a shooting opportunity. So I think moving the ball quickly, definitely tiki-taka's like a must to do that, because if you try and play one touch passing without it, there's a chance it's going to get intercepted. And then, yeah, Venny mentioned something earlier, which I was absolutely guilty of earlier in the cycle, is not knowing when you actually have the chance to shoot, like when you have a good angle to just let a shot off at. Like, you've created the space. It doesn't need to be this wide open one-on-one chance. Like, actually, if the defender stood on the right-hand side and you've got a straight view to the kind of far post, take the shot. Like, just take that shot on. And that thing about attacking with your first touch, if you think that it's 50-50, right? Okay, if I take this touch inside, if he guesses I'm going to go that way, then he's going to get the ball. But if he doesn't, it's a goal. Next time, you can make the same thing. And if it's 50-50, you're going to score every other time you do that. Whereas if you hold the ball and you try and dribble around them and you give them time to get back, and maybe you score that chance 20% of the time, you're better off just going for it off that first touch and trying to create that opportunity straight away.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I would also say, we've talked about first touch. hold R1 or RB and then do the right stick flick as you receive the ball, especially if you've got to play with first touch plus or regular first touch. In fact, I would only use it with those players. You can get this really nice first touch which just like bamboozles your opponent and will get you the space to like take the finesse, or maybe you slip a ball in behind or something like that. So I think that's a good thing to be using. I guess before we wrap up, there was actually one final thing I was going to ask, just sort of your thoughts, Venny, on, because I realized, I think it happened since you were last on the Gameplay podcast, but your thoughts on the big nerf to goalkeeper movement. I know it's like not as strict. I know sort of the vast majority of listeners probably were like, this is a great thing, straightforward, but at the pro level, I know there was more controversy around it because it was considered some level of skill gap. How have you felt about the change now it's been implemented and we've had a bit of time?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly add on to a point what we've all kind of mentioned was
go for
about being aggressive in around the box. There's a saying what Hansi Flick uses for his pressing, but I've actually took this and just used it in generalizing just to play. You force your opponent to make two decisions at all times if you're aggressive. So if you take a forward touch and they don't cover that forward touch, guess what? You have an opportunity to shoot. If they come over to block the shot, guess what? You have a pass. So they're always giving you two options to play for. If you're not aggressive, you're not going to have that opportunity to do both. You're only going to have one. It's easier for them to defend. So make sure, like at all times, that you're thinking about, can I be progressive and be aggressive? And that will help, especially now with the keeper movement nerf, right? You don't need to worry about, oh, they might move the keeper in this spot, I need to overcook, or I need to think about, oh, they might block this shot. If the angle's there and you've got the play styles to utilize with the game changes, the finesse, the low driven we've all spoken about, just press, shoot. Worst case scenario, you get a corner, you know? Or do you know what? Best case scenario, you score a goal. And you would be way, way like better off coming out them games being like, I took the opportunities when I had them than wasted a lot of opportunities when I got there. Let's talk about it in the pro side. Where do I kind of see it? I'm actually on the side that I think it's a good nerf, which might be a surprise for a lot of people that follow the pro scene, but I think it now brings the skill into the defending rather than the keeper moving, which I prefer. I think it should be harder to defend. As I mentioned, this whole episode is like, it needs to be harder to defend, and it forces people to have to defend. Okay, they got the ball in the box. This player's got finesse plus. They got to worry about finesse plus. It allows the creativity from the attacker now to bait the finesse plus, or go and play for a low driven and take the space, or play for the 𝘵𝑃𝑒𝑙𝑎, whatever they want, which is a nice element now into the defending. And it's not this boring, let me just get everyone behind the ball and just stand there. It's now you actually have to defend the players one-on-one, because if you don't, they're going to have the space to just touch and shoot into the far corner.
𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. It has been interesting because I think that is definitely like a level of conversion for a lot of pro level players who've been like, well, actually, this isn't really where we wanted the skill gap, was it? And I feel the same about time finishing, but I know that's another controversial one. But anyway, we should wrap up. Venny, thank you very much. It's been really good to have all your tips and pointers on this episode. Really appreciate it. And if people want, things like coaching or further advice, of course, they can head over to your various social media channels to find that. Is it Coach_Venny everywhere?
Yes, correct.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It's been good. And to Josh as well, of course, always a pleasure to have you on these episodes, and always nice, to learn a few things.
Yes, yeah. And probably the last gameplay pod for a little while. Obviously, this time next week will be Christmas Eve, and I'm not sure I'll be in any fit state to record a pod for that day or the few days after it. So maybe a couple of week hiatus.
Yeah, that makes me think, actually, I'm not sure we've completely decided where the podcast is going to fall, but we have recorded the Christmas special now, the Christmas quiz. So look out for that over the festive period. I won't. It gets very tempting to give spoilers, so I'll move on quickly. But that episode will, of course, be on the main feed. There'll probably be a supporter episode out at some point over Christmas for sure. And yeah, that's a reminder, I guess, if you're not already a supporter, with Christmas being a time for giving, why not support the podcast podcast and get an extra podcast every single week. This week it's the content episode. Next week it will be gameplay. And well, if there is one next week it will be gameplay, and vice versa. So yes, just search Support Foot Weekly, follow the link in the description. And if you are supporting the podcast, then we hugely appreciate that. And a big thank you to all those icon supporters.
Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Josh R, Ralph, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Make B, Michael H, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Damon H, L, James B, Sam K, The Shirt Locker, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Waterman, Also Ran, and Juicy. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.